Hi, and welcome to What Makes the Academy Exceptional. My name is Dr. Jo Tuitt, and I direct the Office of Admissions at the Indiana Academy for Science, Mathematics, and Humanities. In this episode, we'll be talking with three members of our nationally ranked faculty, and they'll be talking about their passion for education and how they transform within the classroom. I am so excited for you to meet them. So let's do so.
Hello, my name is Heather Rogers, and I'm an Associate Lecturer of German and Russian at the Indiana Academy. I have been at the Indiana Academy since 1990, since it opened its doors. What brought me to the Indiana Academy was I was fresh out of grad school, and my major professor saw the advertisement for this brand new school in the Chronicle of Higher Education that wanted a Russian teacher who had German background, and that fit me. And so she encouraged me to apply, and long story short, I applied, I got the position, and I've been here ever since. What makes this place so special, or what makes this place so different, is it is all-consuming, but in a good way, and it's exhilarating. The teaching here is second to none, and you have colleagues who are like-minded, who you can bounce ideas off of, and it's been a great career for me.
Hi, my name is Jessica Edrington. I am an associate lecturer in mathematics. I have been teaching at the Academy. This is my 8th year, and I have been teaching high school since 2006. So you can see I have not taught my entire time at the Academy. I teach calculus and pre-calculus and geometry and whatever else we need in a given year. What brought me to the Academy was I was actually a student here a few decades ago, and I loved my time here so much that I watched for when a math position was available for here at the Academy. And once it was available, I applied, and fortunately I did get hired here. What I love about teaching here compared to teaching at another public high school in the state of Indiana, my previous school, my class sizes were roughly around 30. So I'd have 30 up to 32 students in the room that I'd be trying to make sure was following everything we were doing in class and understanding. Now my average class size is about 15. And that makes it a much richer experience in the classroom. You get to know your students much better, and it's really wonderful to have those relationships and to have those students who are so excited about learning.
Hello, my name is Dr. Krista Hook, and I teach AP Physics 1, Physics and Astronomy Solar System, and every other year I teach Astrophysics 1 and 2. I was actually an undergraduate here at Ball State, getting my degree in physics with a minor in geology and astronomy. And I'd heard of the Academy, but I didn't know much about it. And as I was finishing my PhD, I was looking around, and at the time I only had my master's degree in physics, so I was looking for a place that I could teach, because what really drew me to the Academy originally and why I applied to begin with was because the Academy was all the stories on the streets were like, this is a great place. There's so much innovation. There's so much progress in helping students who are gifted and talented get to where they can be amazing and contribute to society in amazing ways. And once I started here and I was able to meet the students and meet the faculty, I couldn't possibly think of a better place to work and to do all the things that I love to do, and on top of the fact that I get paid to do that, which is great. I currently teach AP Physics 1. I teach part of our Physics and Astronomy course, which is the solar system part, And I also, every other year, teach Astrophysics 1 and 2, all of which are dual credit with Ball State. And even though I know that the majority of my students are not going to go into physics or astronomy, I find it is incredibly fun to get these students who are going to go into whole different realms of the world in the future, interested and knowledgeable about the world around them, particularly in my astronomy classes, because even though I've had students who have absolutely no interest in being astronomers, they are fascinated by space and they're going to become amateur astronomers as a hobby and engage in it that way, which is exciting. And also, all of my students are going to become voters someday, and I want to make sure that they know what's going on with literally the rest of the universe, other than the skin of this earth.
I use a lot of praise, a lot of encouragement, and I let them know that there are second and third chances. Test corrections, but before going into a test, I'll say you've got another chance for this, so don't stress out about it. The praise, you want them to, in my case, to speak the language correctly, to learn the structure, and that's very important. But I found from my own experience as a non-native speaker of German and Russian, as I was learning, that when I was called out for using something incorrectly, all it did was it made me feel shameful and embarrassed, and that's the last thing that I want to do to students in front of their peers. So I try to correct them by saying, oh, really good, great, but let's try it this way. How about if we try it this way instead of what did you say, what ending did you use, or whatever. And so I just try to take a gentler approach because I want people to learn the language, to feel free about speaking the language. I want them to speak it correctly, but the most important thing is don't be ashamed or embarrassed.
Something that I do for my students is part of my class is to have them do things that are extremely challenging. All of our courses here are very rigorous. However, I feel like students struggle the most with physics because it involves so many different skills, because they need to have an ability to understand the questions, they need to be able to understand the mathematical concepts behind them, and they need to be able to apply those concepts to a situation in physics. And so I often find myself trying to encourage them. I say, okay, if you're struggling with these math concepts, go talk to Ms. Edrington or Mr. Asante or Mr. Rourke or like your math teacher or Ms. Fultz. And if they're struggling with understanding questions, I ask them to see my office hours, to speak with their humanities department in the writing center here at the academy to help them write their lab reports. Like, I try to help them access all the wonderful resources we have here to help them in order to make them feel not only confident, but also I do similar things in my class where I have them resubmit lab reports to get a better grade based on the feedback I give them. And I also have them do tests via mastery. So I test them over everything that we have learned before the current test, so that if they do better on concepts they didn't understand before, but it got unlocked after the test, which always almost happens, they have another opportunity to improve that grade, so that their misunderstandings or their lack of understanding at the beginning of the semester doesn't haunt their grade for the rest of the semester. They can redeem themselves and they can feel confident in their gains, as well as their grade reflecting what they ultimately learned by the end of the semester, as opposed to the journey to get there.
One thing that I do to try and make students feel more confident in mathematics especially is I ask them to ask me questions, and then I thank them for asking questions. Thank you for asking that. That's a great question. Because a lot of times what one student is thinking, oh, I don't know how to do that. What did she mean by that? They're not the only one thinking that, and I let them know. If you're having a question, you're probably not the only one. So I encourage you to be the brave one to ask for the rest of the class. So that is a big part of it. I also encourage office hours because that is another chance for students to kind of go one-on-one to help me pick out, well, what is it that's most challenging about this concept or this problem? So that way, once we can identify that, it's easier to overcome.
I have had many students over the years, both in my years teaching college as well as my years teaching high school here at the academy, that were unsure of their futures. And one student in particular comes to mind where they were um, unsure about everything. They were unsure why they were accepted to the academy. They were unsure why they thought that they could make it here. And I remember very vividly the conversation we had in my office. And I said, I said to this student, I was like, you are here for a reason. You've been admitted here for a reason. And while you may not see that now, while you may not even be able to accept that you are an exceptional student now, we see it and you belong here. And I don't know exactly why this helped, but just reiterating what I'm sure they hear from other faculty here, because we're all very much wanting to make sure all the students know that they're here to be challenged. It will be challenging, but they belong here. And I saw this student do a 180 in their attempts to do better in my class, and they talked about how they were doing so much better in their other classes as well. And by the end of the semester, and this was the spring semester, by the end of the semester, they were excited about coming back for their senior year, because not only did they find the confidence they were looking for, but they specifically told me that I was the reason they were coming back and that they couldn't wait to take my astro class next year. I am unsure how that helped, but I am glad that me telling them that and other faculty telling them that they belong here helped.
It's hard to limit it to a story because that's kind of common, especially in the very beginning of the school year when new students come in and they are coming to the academy having been maybe at the top of their class in their home high schools, or maybe never having been challenged and they really only need to phone it in, and all of a sudden they come here and they're with people who are a lot like them, who their identity was the smart one. So right away they start realizing, I'm not the smart one anymore. I'm with a group who is maybe smarter than I am. And now we are offering positions to sophomores. And so students are coming in even younger. And I had a situation where a student came in as a sophomore, and they had texted into a second year level of a language, having had only 1 year of the language at their home high school, which is a little bit unusual because usually our courses are accelerated. As Dr. Hook said, they're challenging. And this showed me that this student probably had a really good experience in that first year. But the student came to class and within the second day felt overwhelmed. I teach the second year in the target language, didn't understand what was going on, felt inadequate, felt like there was no way they could do this. And I noticed on their face right away that they were sinking, and they were sinking fast. And I said, let's talk about it. And I met the student in my office and I told the student that this is my experience. You are not weaker than any of the other students. You are here because you are qualified to be here. And you're in this class because you're qualified to be in this class. And don't think that everybody else knows more than you do, because they don't. And just that talk really helped with the student. And the student left my office feeling much more encouraged. And ever since then, each day seems to have been better. And the student is gaining confidence daily in their abilities.
I have a student who, when the student first came to the academy, was excelling at their home high school, but had not done very well in math, and in fact tested into one of our what we consider lower level math courses. This student had excellent study skills, And I worked with a student who had thought, okay, I'm going to go to med school, I'm going to be a doctor. And as I encouraged the student to come to office hours and they were working through, the problems they had in math and asking, what am I going to have to take if I want to go to med school? And we kind of talked over why they wanted to go to med school and what it was about the medical field that excited them. And talking through it, the student realized, oh, maybe it's not being a doctor that's really exciting. Maybe it's being a nurse. And then they started exploring that. And as an academic advisor, many instructors are academic advisors, which means that we get to talk to students about what classes they want to take and what's going to fit best for their plans after high school, whether that's college or trade or whatever. And we worked through and figured out a plan that, hey, I want to be a nurse. And so we worked out all of these different opportunities as internships and volunteering and all of those that really helped that student grow to the point where they left for college knowing exactly what they wanted to do and having a lot of the foundational courses ready to jump right into the career that they wanted.
What it looks like when a student belongs or when a student has really found their way is all of a sudden I don't have to encourage them to study, or I don't have to try to get them to speak. They just do it. And they start doing it on their own, and they do it outside of class, and they do it with their peers, and they start helping their peers who are not on the same level as they are, and they come to my office and they say, what can I do? What can I do to learn more about this language? Just recently I had a student that this happened to, that they said that over the summer they were working with German and they were very excited about it. And then we talked about some different things to do outside of class, and I recommended a news app that they can download on the phone, and a dictionary that you can use that's kind of embedded within the text. And now the student will say, oh, did you hear what happened to such and such and such? You did what happened in Germany today. The student is reading actual news from an authentic news source about current events. And for me, that's very exciting, because that's what I want students to gain from these language classes, is a broader vision, the ability to access sources in their original that they normally wouldn't be able to access, and to be able to use this language with people outside of our classroom, outside of our state, outside of our country.
When a student discovers that they truly belong in my class, I can see it when they are willing to walk right into my office and ask a question during office hours, when they are, willing to pipe up in class and answer a question or ask a question, when they are willing to help a classmate with something. I especially love it when I walk through the lounge of Wagner Hall at the Academy, and I'll see students from several of my different classes working together at a table, and I see like 2 or 3 different math books out. So I can see my calculus students helping out my pre-calculus students, and they're helping out a geometry student or something like that, but they're all working together, and they're realizing that, hey, this is the math class I belong in, and I can help people in other math classes too. Or they could be working on homework for the same class or studying, and it's really, they realize they belong when they are developing those relationships with people in the class, as well as being willing to ask and answer questions.
In my classes, students really start to shine, particularly in the later half of the semester, when not only do the concepts start clicking in their head, it starts making more and more sense. But also I see the students excitedly come up and be like, Dr. Hook, I have a present for you. And they'll put their assignment in front of me and they'll be all excited, like, I know I did this amazing. And I'm like, I know you did too. I'm going to grade it and we'll talk about it. and they're just so excited about turning in their assignments, and they're so excited about things. And I also get emails from them sometimes of like, Dr. Hook, did you see this on the internet about, such and such comet or such and such going on in the sky? And I'm like, I did not see that. And sometimes it contributes to my astro alerts that I send out via email to let everybody know what's going on in the sky. And it's just that excitement, that moment of not only are they understanding things, but also they are excited about understanding things and being involved. It's kind of special in astronomy in particular, because it's kind of like a real world event as well that they're being more conscientious of because of my class, just like the Germans are doing that with the readings.
Can I mention the astro alerts that Dr. Hook puts out? I love the astro alerts. As you were saying, to if nothing else, to try to create sort of an interest in people who are not physicists. I watch the skies because of Dr. Hook's astro alerts.
One way that I help students feel it's okay to struggle and it's part of learning is I include anecdotes about myself. For example, I tell them when I was in 3rd grade learning my multiplication tables and my mother was quizzing me, my 1st grader brother would answer before me. So I thought, well, I must be terrible at this because my little brother is doing better than me. But I think I'm doing okay in math now. So I let them know that they're not going to be at the same level as everyone else in their life, and that's okay. The other thing is I am unashamed of when I make mistakes on the board. We all have those moments where we miscopy something, or we're thinking one thing and we're writing another, and it makes it, oh, whoops, that is going to be for the next step or the previous step. I miscopied that. I made this mistake. It's going to happen. And I encourage them to tell me when I make a mistake, so it makes them feel better about if they make a mistake. And I think that that makes a difference when they realize that, oh, teachers are not perfect too. So it's okay if I'm not perfect as well.
I help my students with their confidence in 2 main ways. One of which I would agree with Ms. Edrington. I very much enjoy being correct, and not in the sense of the egotistical of, oh, I am correct, but more of the I like to be correct, and if I'm not being correct, I want to be corrected. And part of that is that when I may have calculated something incorrectly, my students will be like, Dr. Hook, I think it's this. And I'll be like, oh, okay. And I'll recalculate it with them. And if they were correct, I was like, oh, I'll fix that. And if they were incorrect, then I'll be like, okay, this is what I did differently. How does that compare to what you did? And then for some reason, students, I don't know if in previous schools they didn't really have this experience or not, but here at the Academy, I guess they don't really have, they have like here at the Academy, they have like a culture shock almost with teachers of being okay with being wrong and being okay with being corrected. I'm like, I'm human. I'm not infallible. I make mistakes all the time, and I also share anecdotes about how one of my Achilles heels with math is I always forget my squares. I always forget them. It is a consistent thing, and my students, they enjoy, oh, Dr. Hook, you forgot your square. And I'm like, oh yeah. And that helps the students who are paying attention but may not be able to necessarily follow what I'm doing. They can identify something I've made, a mistake I've made, and they feel more confident in that I know that was supposed to be squared and she didn't square it. And so it almost gives them an opportunity to almost teach me a little bit, even though I know it should have been squared. Them correcting my mistake gives them more confidence in my class, I find. And that's so important for learning, because if you're not confident in what you're learning, you're going to struggle a lot harder than you are otherwise.
I try to create an environment that is safe, that is comfortable, that is non-threatening. And one of the things I do every day is ask students, how are you? And in both languages, I always designate, now I'm asking you how are you, and I expect more than good or bad or good thank you. I'm going to ask you more in depth about so what is going on? Because usually as the semester goes on and they know more vocabulary, they start getting stressed and worried and sick and tired and happy. A lot of them are happy, but I'll ask them what's going on. And so right off the bat, for the first 5 or 10 minutes, we're sharing with each other in the target language how our day is going or how our week is going. And I think that brings the class closer together. It's also very personal. I go up to the student, I say, "Good morning, such and such. How are you doing today?" The second thing that I do, and I didn't come on to this until a few years ago, but when I start out a semester, especially with the beginning Russian or beginning German, in the old days I used to say, "So, has anybody had any experience with German or with Russian?" And then maybe a quarter of the class might raise their hand, and then some would say, "Well, I've had a full 2 years of German," or "I've been to Germany," or "My parents are German." Well, how does that make the kids who have no experience with any of these languages feel? Well, right off the bat, it makes them feel intimidated. I'm not going to speak. This person knows 2 years of German. Well, I know that if they had took 2 years, they probably don't know any, or else they wouldn't be in first year. But people don't know that. Students don't realize that. And so I stop that. I don't ask anything about past experience. I say, if you have past experience with the languages, come into my office and let me know. If you've got family connections, come into my office and let me know. I'm happy to chat with you about that. But that's not a discussion for the very beginning of a class, when we all want everybody to start on the same level.
In some of the ways that I connect my material to my students, it highly depends on what we're covering. For example, in my solar system class, we cover a plethora of different concepts. But one of the things that I know that students who are not necessarily science oriented often enjoy doing is drawing. So many of my assignments, I have them do some kind of artistry. And I display it on the tunnel walls so that the whole school can see, not only as a way to show that I'm proud of their work, but also a way for them to connect with astronomy, to connect with science and physics in a way that is meaningful, in a way that is accessible, and it also is a way that we can spread the knowledge amongst the students who I don't currently have. Because when you are trying to access something as foundational as literally the rest of the universe, it's so important to not gatekeep that and to do things rigidly. It's important to have some avenue of creativity, some avenue of accessibility, and I often find that adding an art aspect to assignments it makes it more accessible to more students.
So in my classes, the 50 minutes of each class period, I meet 4 days a week, is pretty much dedicated to language and building language skills, learning the linguistic system, and all the fun stuff, like the cultural stuff. I mean, yes, we build that in along with the learning of the language, like the reading texts have cultural issues or cultural topics and so on within them. But I also have a project that I call in German Kulturpunkte, in Russian Kulturные Punkte. And this is a 50-point assignment that students have the entire semester to do, in which they need to go out and read a newspaper article or a magazine article or an article online, and write and do a little quick write-up about what they learned, what is Russian about it, what's going on in Russia, or what is German about it. Films, they can watch a film, they can cook, that's the best. They can cook or they can bake, and a lot of students like to take advantage of that. And then if they bake a recipe, they have to tell me, for example, if it's a German recipe, how does it differ? How do the ingredients differ? The measurements, of course, differ. How did you like the flavors? Did you not? And these are the most fun to read, the ones that didn't turn out quite right, or the ones that students will say, "This tasted just terrible, I hated it. Now maybe I did this wrong." That's fine, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it gives students that exposure to a different cuisine, a different way of doing something, and if their interests are more in film, go watch a film. If their interests are in books, go read a book. I had a student not too long ago who read a novel in English translation. It's German, but it's in English translation. That's over 700 pages. And this student was a very prolific reader and created this beautiful sort of tribute to the book in which the student addressed dialect and costuming and all kinds of stuff. That was a project that was worth the 50 points right off the bat. It was a beautiful, beautiful project, and it combined that which the student was interested in.
I'd like to mention something about the Contrapunkt, which I cannot pronounce.
You did.
But, okay. I had an international student that I hosted who was from South Korea, and she was very excited to take German. And she wanted to do something different, so we went down to the Christmas market at Carmel and walked around all the places, and she was taking pictures of things and looking at the little labels where things were both in English and German, and the German American Society and all of these things, so that she could do that project. Well, the really nifty thing is that she got so into the German, she is actually currently living in Germany. And is going to be enrolling in university in Germany. So she has taken all of that she learned from Frau Rogers in her German class and built on it so that she can actually be living in the country where that is the language.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, so one of the ways that I help tie my curriculum into students' interests is that I mention the different careers that different things we do in class are tied to. So I'll say, this is something, if you're planning on going into computer science, into programming, this is a concept in math that is used there. Or if you're doing engineering, or if you're going into something with chemistry or biology, even in the humanities, I'll tell them, this might not be something that you're interested in. Maybe you're going into writing. Maybe with some of the stuff, if you want to do write science fiction, this will add an element of authenticity to something that you're doing in that genre. So I try to make sure that anything I'm doing, hey, this is something where it could be, this is somewhere it's applied to, or this is going to be foundational to doing something else in the future.
Well, I try to do so with just different activities, kind of a little bit what Dr. Hook was saying with art, incorporating art into a curriculum that maybe is more science-based, right? While linguistics it doesn't lend itself so much, to creativity. I mean, the cultural side does more so, but we do focus very heavily on the language learning. So when it's appropriate, skits, and the skits appeal to the theatrical student. We did one where we were talking in German about Sigmund Freud, and the students wrote a skit of a patient who had a dream, and the Freud was listening to the dream and then had to interpret the dream, and so that again appealed to the more theatrical students. We do sometimes some drawing. And then guessing, for example, drawing a scenario, and the students who can't really draw, I always show them how I draw, which is really terrible, and that sort of hopes, at least that helps them, put them at ease that it's okay, you don't have to be an artist, whereas then my artists can go to town. I've also done an activity with AI bots for students who are a little bit more, technology savvy, where we create AI bots and have conversations with them in Russian on our health. That was during the health unit, where you're asking the bot, so how do you feel today? And the bot comes back, oh, I have a sore throat, or something like that. And then the students can kind of interact with that bot. Now that appeals to the students who really are very shy about speaking up in class. But yet they can have this personal relation, personal, is that a good word? I'm not sure, but this a one-on-one, I guess, relationship with this AI bot in which they're at least using the vocabulary and practicing that way. So I guess I try to do a variety of activities for the students who are more introverted, and for the students who are more performance based.
As I think about my students having different types of intelligence and working on those in mathematics, it makes me think of the 4 different ways that I'm always trying to have my students think about any given concept in mathematics. First of all, they want to look at it graphically, so that means they're looking at a picture of something involving that concept. Then we also look at it numerically, where they're maybe having like a table of values or a set of data, something along those lines. Then we also look at it as far as a formula, so what would be an equation or a model that might go with it. And then finally, we look at it conceptually, which is where we're kind of putting into words how that concept works. So as I do that, students who look at it one way, if I'm showing them all 4 of those ways around that one way that they prefer, I think it helps them build their intelligence in those other 3 aspects in mathematics.
I often introduce all of my courses, with this analogy. And the analogy is that there are students who are cookies and there are students who are cakes. Even though I can't adjust the temperature of my classroom too much, how I teach, what I teach, I try to vary as much as possible. There's only so much that is, literally capable of being done in 50 minutes. But what I do tell them is that it's okay if they don't understand right away. Some of them are going to be cookies, and they're going to cook really fast in this oven, and they're going to understand the concept really well. And others are going to be cakes, and it's going to take a little longer. And it might be a little more difficult to build that understanding before it cooks in the oven. And then some of my students will be like, oh, well, I guess I'm a souffle. And I'm like, well, souffles can still be made. It just takes time. And we need all types. We need all types of intelligences. Science may not be their jam, but I do know that they are capable of it. Anyone is capable of it. If they're willing to put the work in, I'm willing to put in the work in for them as well. And I think that they find that to be refreshing, because in their past experiences, I have had students tell me that, oh, well, my science teachers have told me since I'm bad at science to not even bother trying to get an A, that I should try to get a C. I'm like, oh my goodness, no, absolutely not. Everyone in my class, my goal every semester is to get everyone to have an A. Obviously, that won't always happen. Hasn't happened yet, unfortunately, but that's always my goal. And it's because I know that everyone in my classroom is capable in some way of showing their understanding. I just have to help them find that way.
I think one of the roles that we as instructors at the Academy fill to make students feel they belong at the Academy is, first, we are that welcoming, smiling face you see when you walk into a classroom. We are the ones that are saying hi to students in the hallways as they're walking between classes, as we head to class. We are the ones that are welcoming students into our offices and helping them with assignments or helping them get caught up if they've missed something. And we are also the ones that are sponsoring their clubs and teams and helping them to explore the interests that they have, whether it be something like Quiz Bowl or Spell Bowl or Academic Super Bowl, or an astronomy club or a Russian club or Spanish club, or any of the other different kinds of just communities that they're building within the school, or competitions that they want to compete in outside of the school.
I like to think that partly, I am a mentor for them, kind of a role model for them, as far as, all of us really, faculty and staff, that look at where we are in our careers, look at what we have done, what interests us, what we do with what interests us. We are, I hate to say experts in our field, but we know our fields, and we like them, and we like sharing that with the students. And I like to think that the students can find that maybe contagious, and maybe that will start them on a path that they never even dreamed of. Many times over the years, we would have students coming in declaring, "Oh, I'm a humanities person straight down the line," and they leave the academy just crazy about physics, or coming in saying, I want to be a historian or something, and they leave having discovered math, or vice versa. Certainly in the languages, most kids have never had exposure to Russian, some to German, but not a lot, and especially that Russian, I've had more kids come in and just really fall in love with the study of Russian and Russian culture and everything that goes along with it, and then end up pursuing that direction. So I think a lot of us are passionate about what we teach, and that's contagious. And kids who have never thought of this before, whatever discipline it is, it gives them a chance to look at it through a different lens.
Many of the students that we have are neurodivergent, and part of my introduction to every course is to tell them that I am neurodivergent, and that that instills some kind of confidence in them. They're like, look, she's one of us, and she has a PhD, and she is, doing her dream, and that could be me. And I feel as though when I am just doing my thing and trying to teach my courses and tell them about all the things that I love about astronomy and all of that, I've had students who have told me, "You're one of us. You understand the neurodivergent mind. You are representing us amongst the faculty. You are making changes to your classroom that help people like us." And one of the things I'll never forget is one of my students told me that I had told this student something that he'll never forget, and he said that when you told the class that you went into teaching because you wanted to be the teacher that you didn't have in high school, that has inspired me to become a teacher myself. And that felt so nice. and it feels so nice to be able to not only be an advocate for my people, but also being somebody of authority, being someone who has accomplished as much as I have, proves that they can too. And I think that is such an important aspect to their lives as neurodivergent people, is that there's too many parts of our society who tell them that they're less than, or they're not capable of certain things. They might as well not even try. And here at the Academy, the other faculty as well as myself are telling them otherwise, and we're showing them otherwise, and we're giving them opportunities to shine otherwise. And I think that's important. And I think it's what makes the Academy special to begin with.
Oh, they are very supportive of each other in the classes. We do a lot of group work, communicating, with each other in the small groups. And they like to choose their own groups. That's pretty natural. They want to stay with their friends, but I don't let them. A lot of times I will when I'm kind of lazy, like, oh, we have 10 minutes left. All right, just whoever you're sitting next to. But a lot of times I mix them up. And sometimes I mix them up with intention, with students who are quieter, or with somebody who is a little more outgoing, or students who are struggling, maybe with some stronger partners. And in those groups, and I always visit every group multiple times during the activity. And within those groups, there's collaboration, there's patience, there's understanding going on. There's nothing negative. And I'm always amazed at how well students support each other in these groups. Tutoring, I usually recommend. I always ask people if they're stronger students, are they interested in tutoring? And if they are, I recommend students to meet with them, and that has been wildly successful. last year I had a student who tutored, almost really became a second teacher. I would go out into the home tree area, which is like a small little lounge with a big whiteboard. And this student would have about 4 or 5 students sitting around the desks, and he was at the whiteboard explaining grammar and making worksheets for students. So he graduated, and this year the students who are now in seniors are asking me, can you please make worksheets like this, like our tutor did last year? I mean, it was extraordinary, the passion that one particular student felt in sharing with others something that he was becoming very passionate about.
I've found that students support each other in my classes in several different ways. We do have several different activities that we do throughout the semester, and I do sometimes let them form their own groups, and I also will create groups of 3 where they have mixed levels of understanding of what we're doing. And those can be during review activities or things we're doing new. One thing I really like that has started recently is that students can become teaching assistants to a course that they've already taken. And this is the second year I've taken advantage of this program that we have at the Academy now. And it's really exciting when you get to the end of the year and a student's like, I really think I've learned a lot over the course of this year. I'd like to be a TA for this class next year. If it fits into my schedule, would you let me do that? And because of that, these students are seeing their, sort of peers show some ownership of that material. And they're holding review sessions before tests and quizzes. And like, hey, I know how she's going to write a question like this because I was in her class last year. And I know that this is kind of how, she'll phrase it or something like that. But they have that ability to relate to the students on a level that I can't, because it's been 30 years since I've been their age. But they do still sit in on class and they're like, yeah, remember when she was talking about it this way in class? Well, also you can think of it that way. And so that's one way that I found that students like to support each other is by taking that role as a tutor or as a teaching assistant to really support each other.
The Academy is special in a lot of different ways. And one of the main ones is how academically motivated and supportive our students are. In all my years in college, I never truly came across a community as dedicated to their education as the Academy students are here. And in fact, some of our students that have graduated since made it a point that if they were going to the same college as other academites, that they were going to room with them in an apartment so that they would have that same community, that same academic inclinations around them, even in college. And oftentimes in my classroom, when we're doing work, I'll have them work in groups of 2 or 3 to go over their exam or to do problems in class, not because I can't do it, because I can, but more of giving the students who understand a little bit more the opportunity to have that social aspect to learning that is so essential to a student's progress through content, but also there is just something about teaching another student peer-to-peer that makes it more accessible. It makes it more authentic and relatable that, that student is also in her class and they're understanding a little bit more than I am. I can ask them. It's less scary to ask another student questions. It's less intimidating, and it also it empowers the student who's helping to feel more confident with the content, and it empowers them to actually learn more effectively, because now not only do they understand the concept internally, but they are also capable of externally showing their understanding to someone else to the point where they're helping that other student learn the material. I find that kind of interaction invaluable in the classroom experience, and also invaluable to our students. And I am very happy that our students are trying to continue that legacy or that tradition of having an academically inclined friend group that helps them and supports them, not just emotionally, but also academically, as an essential key aspect to the success of our students.
At the Indiana Academy, teaching transforms. You see that displayed in our students through their curiosity, their engagement in their classrooms, and their passion for learning. If you as a parent or as a student are seeking something different or wanting to go deeper in education, want to be with a peer group who's also excited about learning, we invite you to learn more about the Indiana Academy. Visit our website, schedule a visit, reach out. Thank you so much for joining.